This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook channels with Shirena Parker for the first time. It's their first interview, and we're excited to have you on. And
Thank you.
and what we like to do is go into like a full depth, kind of behind the music type of interview. But before we do that, we do have some sponsors that we have to talk about that help us do this, because we do these interviews with independent artists and emerging artists for free. So one of the first sponsors we have is an iOS and Android app called Newsly.me. And basically it reads the news back to you in a natural voice, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. If you use coupon code GHOST2021, and that's correct, you can get a free 1 month premium subscription. So again, if you use Ghost 2021, you go out to Newsly or www.newsly.me and download the app and use that code Ghost 2021. You get 1 month free. So that's one of the first sponsors we have. We have one more, and that sponsor is called Double Jack Online. So we're going to talk about them for a second. So Double Jack Online is a philanthropic online lottery. That's out of Europe. And what they do is they do Keno and Powerball and some other things. And if you actually use this coupon code that we've got, well, it's actually a scan code. So what happens if you take your phone right now and you scan that, you can go to Double Jack Online. They also do NFTs, so they do crypto digital art, and they also do crowdfunding. So if you're a band and you're trying to fund your album or trying to fund a tour or trying to fund some type of project, you can work with them and they can create a campaign for you to get actual crowdfunding for your project. So if you go out, and you can also become an influencer for them, and you get side income from either the people who do their lottery, the NFTs, or their crowdfunding. So it's kind of a win-win. You can get side income as an artist, another source of income to fund what you're doing. So that's something that we'd like to tell people about and check it out. And after that, we're out of our sponsors, and we're going to bring up your link tree. We encourage everybody to go out to the artists that we promote, and this is going to be out there for the whole interview. So we have your link tree, and we're also going to, in a couple seconds, actually show a YouTube video that you gave us, so people can actually hear what you sound like, and then we'll go into the full kind of interview and ask you like why you got into music and all that stuff. But we're going to cue that up. We actually have the video queued up. It's for a video that is called Blind, right? That's the video. That's what we have.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna put you on mute, and we'll do the full video, and then when we come back, we'll put you into the full interview and ask about why you got into music and why it's your passion and all those great things. So we're gonna play this right now, and thank you, and everybody. I hope you enjoy it.
I don't know. I had tried, you replied, I don't know. Feel inside, crucified, I don't know. I put in and you got out, take it in, said it out, I don't know. Yeah. Cause you don't even know what you're doing all alone, and you don't wanna see, but I know that you're strong. You can tell the fake cause you run from yourself. You want there to see cause you holding yourself. I know why you fight, why you thinking not like me. Get all apart, no sign of heat. Cause every day says the love is mine, but baby that don't feel right. Cause it's messed up, it's funny how you came across, saving the rockets that you could shoot off, yeah. I'm always feeling like I'm coming out Till every day says that love is blind. But baby, that don't feel right. Yeah, baby, that don't feel Baby, it don't feel right.
Sacramento. Yeah, that right there was shot by Ricky J Films. It was recorded by Marksman here in Sacramento, and that was so fun. That was great. Gaddy B was the model on that one. He's out of San Francisco, and we just had so much fun. I was so grateful to be able to do it. We even had to kick some people off of the off the court for a second. Like, hey, you mind if we shoot a video real quick? They're like, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So thank you to the boys that let us film. If you're out there, thanks for letting us disrupt your game.
Well, thank you. I mean, I love to have a good picture of you as an artist, and your voice is so great, and I like the vibe. And so, we're basically going to start at the beginning of how you got into music. So, one of the first things we always ask the artists come on the show is basically, what age did you get into music? When did you first start thinking about music seriously?
I mean, it's kind of like it's a Shrek answer, like an onion with layers. It's got layers to the answer because I mean, for me, man, music was more of a like a coming into my own type of thing, because it started with me coming to the States. I was born out of the country, so when I came to the States, I didn't know the language, and I had heard a piano for the first time, and that to me was like my first, like, I gotta learn this. And so when I started taking lessons, I had to learn what was in the books, but I wanted to write. I wanted to write so bad. So I actually started writing the piano when I was 6. And then kind of from that point, using my actual voice was more to just get out kind of what I was, just growing up, and just kind of feeling very different, out of place a lot of the time. I just started writing my own lyrics with the music. But those were put away for a very long time, and no one heard most of those. So, yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I find with singer-songwriters is like people who do it right because it's a passion. As a writer myself, I started out with like poetry, and I happened to be a musician, and I didn't think about combining the two for a long time. Because like, this is private. These poems are private. But then I realized, like, well, when you look at the people you are like influenced by, like I like people like Neil Young and Bob Dylan, who and stuff. Like they had to sit down and finally say, well, I'm going to use my voice, right, and I'm going to express what I want to say. And it's a risk. Like when you're a songwriter, like
always
that is like it's your personal method of getting things.
Yeah, and if they don't see it, because art is subjective, we all, we like it, we don't, maybe, but it's one of those things. If they don't like it, it definitely feels like they don't like a part of, you. So it is a little bit nerve-wracking putting it out. I don't think at that point in my life I was ready to do any of that yet, but I think, coming into my own a little bit, I'm certainly ready to talk a little bit about it. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you've been working on music since you were very young, but I guess the point is, when did you discover, like, some people get into music and they become a classical pianist, or they join an orchestra, or they become a studio musician. Now every musician decides to actually write their own thing, right? Sometimes they work with other people. So one of the things is, like, in terms of, did you always want to be like a singer songwriter, or and express yourself in that way, or did you come to that?
I think I just always did. I was raised in the church. My dad was a preacher growing up, and so music and choir and all that was always there. So even though I was not necessarily able to sing my own music, I still very much enjoyed being up there and singing. And so for me, I knew that that lit a fire inside of me. And so even though my own music wasn't heard at that time, it was still so meaningful for me to be able to write it. And then I think it just, I don't know, I think we all got to come to that point where we say, okay, I'm just going to just try, you know what I mean? And for me, I didn't realize now what it would become when I first 2 years ago, you know, I had put out my first single. So I've had 11 singles and my first one was just a couple years ago. And I didn't know that it would get the response that it did. So I just feel grateful that I have ears that will listen, honestly, you know? And so I just figure I'm going to keep going. And it was always inside of me, but to have an audience that's willing to hear it is like priceless to me. So
yeah, that's the real like the thing is like we as a musician, like you want, you know, you have your craft, you want to create your work, and then you're trying
yeah.
to get that audience that will see your authentic self. And in some cases, you know, some musicians, we have like this other self, right? So in order to be on
I'm a
stage,
Gemini. You don't have to tell me.
yeah, it's like there's this other you, or what they call like in the looking glass, right? So a lot of musicians and artists, like you get the big example, like a person like David Bowie. David Bowie kept on changing, right? And the story about him was like when he tried to be himself, David
Yeah.
David Jones, it didn't work. Like when he
Mhm.
first came on the scene in the late 60s, he tried to come out as David Jones, and he didn't look like Ziggy. He didn't have all those images, and it didn't hit. And then when he kind of had this theatrical nature to himself, he said, "What if I go and I just get real
Mhm.
theatrical, and I create this
Yeah.
other image of myself?" And you see
That's
this,
everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes that's the other person, it's you, but in order to be on stage, you kind of project this other person that gives you this confidence or whatever. Do you
Yeah.
feel like when you go on stage, even if you know you're presenting yourself, that that's somehow like a different version of yourself?
Um, I think I'm getting there. I think I'm getting there. I don't think that I've done enough live performances. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I was like the girl in the dark sitting behind a piano, playing and writing. I mean, this is really one of the very first times that I've really been in front of cameras or anyone, anything like that. You know, it's all very new to me. But I like to think that because when I'm writing my music, it is very authentic to where I'm at in my life at that moment, that when I do perform, you do see it. You know, you do see that authenticity. I don't necessarily know if it's any type of like alter ego confidence, but I certainly see as far as what the future could hold, and as far as like Iraq, where I'm from, that is in my heart, my bloodline, and my soul. And it's, you know, you can hear it in my voice when I sing. And so for me to be able to be raised here in the States, in the Bay Area with so many greats, and have that to look up to, and just almost like the combination of the two worlds coming together, I do feel like there's going to be an amazing type of, um, I don't know, something that comes from it. And I'm excited to see that. I hope that I continue to grow as an artist so that I can just represent well and also just have the best time doing it. So
Yeah, because you did, you know, in your write up that I was reading, you did say that, you know, you in your talent and your, I guess when you discovered your ability to do music, it's kind of like your childhood had been rough, and did that really influence the way you write? Because of all the things you had to go through before you came here. Because I know you came from like
yeah.
Mosul, Iraq, and everybody knows the whole history of what's been going on, you know, over the last decade or 2 decades. So was that a lot of what the content of the feelings that you had when you write your music? And maybe you can describe like where you're coming from in terms of
Sure,
your,
yeah. So I was born in Mosul, Iraq, and I was adopted out of a refugee camp there and brought to the States, and I was raised here. And so for me, I just, you know, there's so much beauty and art and culture in the Middle East, and I feel so lucky and proud to be Iraqi, but also to have the opportunity to be raised here in the States and to be able to have. Um, a voice is such a privilege, and um, I did feel very different growing up. And so I think when you feel different, there's a level of isolation, excuse me, that comes with that. And so to be
Yeah.
able to throw myself into music, that was my medicine. That was a very healing thing for me. Um, but to kind of, sorry, your question one more time, I kind of got on a
I
rabbit
guess
trail.
it's like everybody's, in African American kind of blues tradition, right? If you think about the Delta blues in African American writing, right? A lot of our writing kind of came from like our history in America.
Hmm.
And it's
Yes,
really kind of like the downtrodden kind of coming from that whole Civil
yes,
War slavery thing.
yes,
There's a whole lot of history that a lot of
yeah,
people can kind of channel when you go to New Orleans and you
yeah.
listen to the black musicians in New Orleans, or we go to the Delta in Mississippi, or you go down south,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out where did the blues come from, where did jazz come from, where does R&B come from? It came from this
Mm-hmm.
kind of place of pain, and a lot of
Yes.
these African American artists, we took that pain and we turned it into art,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
we can
Yes.
kind of recognize that in other people from other cultures,
Yes.
like what you're saying in the Middle East and the situations, like
Mm-hmm.
the artist kind of takes like what happened in their life.
Yeah.
And
And I feel so grateful because I feel like hip hop gave me a home. And I mean, for me, I always thought, when I was in these studios, even in high school, like it was the land of the storytellers. And I felt so at home, and I felt so grateful to be in such good company. And so for me, when I'm, like I said, it's almost like worlds collide for me to be able to write in a way that hasn't been done before, but also, like you said, to be able to talk about um, what we bear, the pain that we bear. And I am able to kind of see that we're all the same. And it's the best and most amazing thing in the world, because I'm talking to all these amazing individuals from Iraq and all these incredible people from Atlanta and New York and LA here. And I'm like, we are exactly the same. And it's just the best thing. And so I'm really excited to bring all that Big East energy here to the States, to anyone that will listen, and just kind of have this beautiful new wave that comes through, and just be able to show the US how incredible, and all the art, like I said, and passion that is there in the Middle East. So,
I
yeah.
think that's just fantastic, because I think part of music I like about music is cross genre and cross
Yeah.
cultural.
Yeah.
Like a lot of what I'm into, is like stuff that came from different places. Like I'm a synthesist, right? So a lot of
Yes.
synthesizer work came out of bands like out of Berlin, like Kraftwerk. And
Yes.
then you think of like a guy like Prince or Stevie Wonder. Well, they were influenced by what was going on with like Kraftwerk in Berlin. And so
Right.
so there's like the history of African American culture, but then you get like this kind of technology, industrial kind of synth sound that you got a band out of Germany called Kraftwerk,
Mm-hmm.
or you get jazz influences, or you get all kinds of influence from everywhere, and I
Yeah.
listen to like bands like Genesis and
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then
Yeah.
jazz, and then hip hop, and like I like to mix
Jazz.
everything. What I call in my label was expansive sound, and the idea of expansive sound is kind of what you're talking about. You have the whole world to listen to, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be influenced by a Middle Eastern sound, or a sound from
Yeah.
Tibet, or somewhere in the rainforest, wherever you
Mm-hmm.
feel is going to service the feeling you have as a musician. I think we're kind of in a world where we're wide open,
Yes.
that you can have so many influences. You can do all this cross genre stuff, like when you're taking Middle Eastern
Yeah.
feel from Iraq and bringing it into hip hop, or that's really cool. I think that's
Yeah, and it's just crazy too, because I mean, I think that one or the other or both could have been like, no, you know what I mean? Because it is different, you know what I mean? You put this really sexy Bay Area 808 on
yeah.
this voice from the Middle East. What are you gonna do? So it's like I'm so excited to be able to like I said, to do it and have people that listen. It's like the best.
Yeah, I
So
think that's at the melting pot of music. And kind of like one good thing about the States is that we were very, the one thing that we've always been really into is like, the arts. Is like, a lot of art, African Americans, in the US, we created like multiple genres, from the blues to hip hop to rock. There's a lot of, you know, hands in the pie, creating this,
Yes.
world
Right.
where you get a Hendrix, you get a Herbie Hancock, you got hip hop people, great. They came
Mm-hmm.
basically out of the kind of culture that allows like that to happen. That does,
Yes.
there's less restrictions in terms, so people can be free to challenge themselves and say, well, why can't I do that? Right? Why can't
Yes.
I break the rules? Why can't I, change the tempo? Why,
Yeah.
why can't I go use an 808? Because the thing that's
Mm-hmm.
funny about an 808, the Roland Corporation that made that drum machine, that drum machine failed in the market. But people don't understand. It's like the 808 was not a success.
Oh,
What
that's incredible. I
what
didn't know
happened
that.
yeah, what happened is it was put out in the mid 70s and then nobody bought it. And then a lot of hip hop artists found them in pawn shops. And then it
Wow.
happened to work with what hip hop was doing at the time. They said, wow, I can get this really cheap drum and I can go and rap over it along with the scratching. And it
That's
gave them,
unbelievable.
yeah, and it's like the same thing with the TB303. It was a failed product. So a lot of like it's interesting that people found these failed
Oh
products, and
yeah.
now the 808 is like people would think that it was super successful, but it wasn't. And so
Mm.
like, people find things from different eras and then suddenly make it like more. So in its time,
Yeah.
it didn't hit, and that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like the way music is. Like different phases happen where somebody
Yes.
might try something, didn't work, and then suddenly it works. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it
Yeah.
just happens that way, and I think that's what's great about music. And I love talking to people who aren't like in the top 10 initially, right? Because like
Right.
everything is coming from like the underground, like it's
Yeah.
coming from the club or coming from
It
some,
all does. I'm the underdog from the underground, so it's like the
yeah. Well, I just think that's why I like to try to elevate that and make that the
yeah.
focus of what my podcast is. So the other question I like to talk about is like in terms of like your influences. I realize you mentioned some of them, but I'll have when you write up, maybe talk to the people on the podcast about who are the artists that really inspired you and influenced you even today.
Well, for me, there was a lot because it's like there's the artists that I grew up listening to who just, we can't help but be influenced somehow by the music we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
You don't hear it a lot in my writing, but all these Bay Area legends, especially like I met E40 when I was 17, so I got to grow up just listening to these rhymes and it was just so good. But like right now, I would say some of the storytellers I listen to most would be so Derez Deshawn out of Atlanta was one of the first to kind of do the whole pain in hip hop thing, and that was really cool for me to see. He's out of Atlanta, and then of course like Joyner Lucas, Kanye West. I mean, I love the way that they storytell, and they don't think about oh, what is this going to sound like? Or is this too rough around the edges? They're like, nope, this is the story. Here you go. Like, I love it. And
Yeah.
so I just,
Yeah.
I love that type of authenticity and breaking the rules and just writing what's in you, really, despite if anyone is really truly going to understand it, you feel like or not, because what I've learned is that there's always somebody who understands
Yeah,
somewhere,
I think there's
so
always,
it's like that. Yeah, so you put it out, what's in your heart, no matter what, and for me, I didn't care that I haven't seen, the Middle East represented in, top 10 music. Yeah, okay, we're gonna do it. So
you gotta do. I mean, if you think about it, like Led Zeppelin, back in the day, they did their song Kashmir, which had like this kind of different feel to it. It was more maybe Hindu, but the Beatles played with that too. Like they crossed into different sounds that weren't just English sounds or blues sounds. They
right,
bring in the sitar, and people
yes,
would bring in other instruments that were from other cultures. Paul
mm-hmm.
Simon bringing in South African drums and singers into his work. I think it's always good when you can integrate culturally with other people maybe you didn't think you
Mm-hmm.
were going to work with, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting. In hip hop, there's a lot of crossing right now. Maybe in the rock genre is not as much as it used to be in the '60s,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
it seems like hip hop is where rock was when the Beatles were doing what they were doing, because now you've got, people in jazz bands, you got live
Right.
musicians playing with hip hop bands,
Yes.
people doing orchestras, people bringing like, trumpets and saxes and
Yes.
flutes. It's just a real hodgepodge where you can have like a country western influenced hip song.
Right.
You can have stuff coming from Africa, like African in Central America. You can have things
Yes.
coming from like Middle Eastern hip vibe.
Everything.
It's
Hey,
just
if it sounds
everything.
good.
You just do it. Like to me, what
Yes.
serves the song. You get some
Yes.
people say, "I'm only gonna use samples," or "I'm only gonna use
For the service.
this." It's like I kind of go back and forth between like analog instruments and modern, things like an Akai, MPC.
Yeah.
So maybe one day my Moog, one of my Moogs is the thing I need to do, right? I'll take one of my Moogs or take a Hammond B3 or something. But another day I might be using an MPC because I got that like kind of vibe where I want to do like old school 80s hip
Right.
hop. And that's
Love
what I'm
it.
going to do. It's kind of whatever serves the song. So you can't say, well, I'm only going to do this. I'm only going
Right.
to do trip hop. I'm only going to do trap. I'm only going to do EDM. I think it's like whatever it is.
Right.
You should do because that's what you feel the song should have,
Well, and for me as an artist too, like I have grown and moved in different ways. Like my sound, even finding it was like in the last couple of years, but I've been doing music my whole life. So, it does take time because we grow and we change as well. And so just being open to listening to everything and trying everything is really going to help you find what feels most like you, at least in my experience,
Yeah, because I mean, when we asked you about your writing style, and that's always a hard thing for people to ask in the genre, is like alternative hip hop. That's a really interesting thing because I haven't heard people actually say that, and that I find that very interesting because I'm very much like an alternative kind of indie artist, and I like to go and like I have some stuff that's very punk. Sounds like the Clash, sounds like the Sex Pistols, and other stuff that goes into like Genesis and Yes. And Journey, and it's going in a different direction. So you're doing like arena rock, it's like well, it's kind of wherever you can go when you're a keyboardist,
right?
Because the nature of being a keyboardist, you can kind of go classical, you can go jazz, you can go blues, you could go anywhere you want to go, depending on what you know. And it's kind of like having the idea of an alternative. I think you up that like you could do like East Coast, West Coast,
anything,
whatever, anything.
Absolutely. And for me, like even traveling to different music cities, I remember being out in Maryland. Oh my Lord, the hip hop culture in Maryland. Oh my God, it was so great. And so just like the clubs down, I mean, it's like girls in California dance one way, girls in Maryland dance another way. It was just everything was just so different and so amazing. And I was just like, damn, and this is in the same country, right? So I just wanted to just go to every city and just make music with as many people as I can.
The scenes are so different. Like if you think about like a Boston trance scene is not what it is in LA.
Like, I don't know nothing about a Boston trance scene. What do I need to know about a Boston?
No, but I'm just saying that it's different. It's just weird.
Yeah, no, it sounds great though.
It's different what people interpret, right? So like you could go like an old club like in New York with CBGBs, right? Was like where the Ramones came out of and Talking Heads came out of there. And the idea was, you can, the cool thing about that club is like the Talking Heads are very different from the Ramones. And different, and the bands that were playing during that time, to kind of this post-punk early new wave, and it was just a lot of energy. There was a lot of authenticity. If you think about a band like the Ramones, it's very powerful punk, but it was poppy, and it was like they had songs that were punk, but they were catchy, and they're like, wow, that's like pop punk, and it kind of inspired like this kind of edge that we would get into the new wave movement. Cause I grew up like as a child in the 70s, and in the 80s, like the reason I'm into synthesizers is because there was like convergence from like disco and punk. And then you got new wave bands like Duran Duran, Flock of Seagulls, and The Cure.
Yeah.
And it was this whole time was like, wow, you can actually take all these drum machines and all these synths that were used by bands like Yes and Genesis and Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and do something different with them.
You can do anything you want. I took a corn nut once. I was in a studio in LA. I took a corn nut and I like crunched it. And I like looked at the producer. I was like, "Hey yo," I was like,
Well,
"Hit
you
record real quick."
you
We did, and it was like, and of course it was like the perfect crunch. I was like, "Oh, it was so crystal clear." I was like, "Shh." And we put it in the beat. It was fun.
But that's what's interesting is like you can take like kind of what I like it about the punk attitude was that there's this honesty. And if you think
Yeah.
about it, like grunge, like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, right? They are
Mhm.
like a like they came out of this idea from the original punk bands like Ramones, but that had gone away. And so by
Yeah.
the time when grunge came along, all the punk bands were done, and it wasn't really a
Right.
punk scene. It was really low in on the totem pole. It was
Yeah.
like really low in these small labels like Sub Pop out of Seattle. There was a scene in Seattle, and it was very small. And then
Mhm.
suddenly Kurt came on the scene, and it just exploded. And then
Yeah.
you had like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all these bands, Alice in Chains. It suddenly became the scene again. And so
Yeah.
you never know when something that's underground
Okay,
suddenly becomes
right now there are new bands coming out that are like little baby Green Days. Have you heard these? Like,
I haven't
it's
seen them yet.
amazing. They're like these, I think they're like TikTok stars or something, but it's like this new wave of like,
Punk type of grunge is coming.
yes, sir, that's coming back. I'm so with it too. I was listening to some of it. I was like, okay, I
I
got to give
love.
it a
I
couple
always
days.
think it comes back. I think that kind of thing of what I like about it, what I try to say about the punk, is even if you're a hip hop artist or an EDM artist or somebody doing club music, the thing about punk that's towards this idea of the punk aesthetic is that there's this
Mhm.
honesty. You don't have to be pitch perfect.
Exactly.
You have to
Yes.
believe what you're doing, right? You
Yeah.
believe in it. And even if you're not the best singer and the best guitar player, it's because you believe it that the audience.
Avril Lavigne got me through some dark days, let me tell you.
Well, I think
It's
it's
the
that
truth.
honesty in songwriting that then you can take that. And I think a lot of hip hop people can take like this kind of punk aesthetic and
Yes.
put it into their music when they're being like very aggressive with their lyrics or don't care what they say. That's kind of
Yeah.
like that punk attitude. Is it's not
Yeah.
it's a cool thing to have because it
Mhm.
gives you that edge and makes you feel like I'm not scared of what you think I'm going. I don't care what you think about it.
Right,
I
exactly.
I believe in it, and because I believe in it, other people are going to believe it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's like as a musician, you kind of have to have that kind of belief in yourself. Uh,
definitely.
and maybe when people say, "Well, how come you're so like high on yourself?" It's like, well, I think that's part of like being an artist is you have to have certain level of confidence uh,
Mm.
to write your own song and to say what you want to say. It does put you in a different category where you have to believe it. You know.
Yeah, and just don't give up if you're not there yet. Because for me, like it took me a second, obviously, to be able to get to the point where I was willing to really open up and share and sing, but I'm so glad that I did. But yeah, it takes a while because you gotta be ready for sure. And
Yeah.
once you are there, it's a commitment. It's a huge commitment to your music and to your fans and to I would say like the process too, because you want it to continue to be authentic. You don't want to get wrapped up in, what you feel like people want to see or hear. And like I said, when you're kind of on the brink of a new wave of something like that, there's no map or anything, right? So you're just kind of hoping that everything that you're doing um, is accepted and yeah. And so far, I've just, like I said, I've just been lucky. So
So that kind of comes into like when you work as a musician and a singer songwriter, you work with producers, and it's a
mm,
kind of like a different way of working because certain artists are
yeah,
looking for producers to make them the next big thing, right? And they're willing
yeah,
to kind of make their original ideas more like pushed down and take the ideas
mm,
of the producer. And maybe the producer's got a history of doing like big hits, but then
yeah.
your own style kind of gets pushed down. So
Hmm.
do you tend to want to work with people that embellish what you do and make it better, or try to turn you into something that maybe you're not exactly you're the comfortable with? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it really depends on the producer because for me, the producer is just as much the artist as the artist. So just going into an understanding beforehand, like for example, like I've come in where a song is like ready to go and I'm like, nobody talk to me, I'm ready, la la la, like we got this, and they hit record and we do it and we mix it the way, but then there's other times where the song really gets built in layers, and I love being open to, hey, what if we did this? What if we tried this? And it is really a collaborative effort. And there are producers out there that are so wildly talented that could make you blow up for sure, because their stuff is so good, so it just really depends on what you're looking for. But I'm more of an artist that, because I played piano my whole life, and I was classically trained there, and I do sing and I do write. So because of that, I do enjoy, I guess, the relationship with the producer, where I feel like I can speak to my own music, but also because I'm so new in the process, it really means a lot to me to be able to hear, hey, Shirena, why don't you try this? Or
well, I think what really is good is when you work with a producer that actually listens to the artist too.
Yeah.
Because there's some producers that are kind of top down, and they're like, I'm the expert, you're the neophyte, and you should take like 90% of my ideas and maybe keep 10 to yours.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of more like, I like working with the person that's more give and take, 50-40.
Yeah. I mean, both hearts have to be in it at the end of the day. It has to be a passion project. It does. In order for that record to be believable and honest and true, it has to be a passion project from both sides. It's never just the producer or just the artist. I mean, truly, I do feel that. So
yeah. I think it's like when you have a vision, I think as an artist, and I think this is what happens, like if you're just a vocalist, right, and you don't write your own lyrics, you actually take other people's lyrics, but you're really talented at vocals. And there's some people in the industry, that doesn't mean you're not an artist, because being a singer is a capability. But I think what I like to concentrate on is the singer-songwriter, because every singer-songwriter has a vision of what they want their music
100%.
to be. And when they work with people, they try to get the people that are going to make that vision work. And that's the relationship. Even if you're in a band, right? Like if you're in a band and you're not just like a singer-songwriter, and you've got like a bass player and a drummer, it's that kind of communication between everybody in the band that makes that everybody is talking and saying, well, the drummer might have heard an 808 in the demo, but then they turned it into they own it. A professional drummer will take like a drum machine and then rework it and do some fantastic things that you could never could have programmed.
Right.
Just like a bass player could take your bass line you wrote on your piano and make it magical. I think it's like every musician can kind of take an initial idea and embellish it. And I think it's really your team, how that works and how that chemistry is, that really makes like your everything that you do, right?
Absolutely, yes. 100%. Yeah. This LP that's coming out at the end of the month, I am recording at Valstand Studios in Sacramento, California. I'm so excited. We're just going to be in there. We've got Rand, who's an amazing videographer, giving us all these behind the scenes shots so that you guys can kind of see what we're like in the studio. We eat a lot of candy and I don't know if I'm allowed to.
No, when's the album going to be ready? Or it's a full album or an EP?
So it's an LP. It's going to be 3 songs, and that was supposed to be released on the 31st of March, so the end of this month.
That's awesome. So you're heavy into it.
Yes, we're very, very. And so I was going to say my voice is a little bit hoarse today because I've been just singing, but yes, we're super excited about it. So.
Now, are you thinking you're going to be able to tour it, or you're just going to make videos for it, or how are you going to approach like promoting it? Are you going to physically do shows or do like like more podcasts or interviews on radio, or what's your plan?
So just as many interviews as possible, and then we have some amazing playlist curators who have said yes, we're ready for you. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And then we're definitely going to do a video, depending on which song is streamed the most, which one I think people vibe with the most. We'll shoot a video for that one.
Oh, that's a good strategy. What I've done.
Oh, you like that?
What I like is that what I tend to do is like I'll put a lot of things on SoundCloud, and then the ones that really blow up are the ones I say, okay, well, the kind of natural underground artists audience likes this. So then that gives me a direction that they think I'm doing something right. And then
Yeah.
that's the one I might then send to Spotify or Apple
Right.
Title because it's getting a buzz. And so I get to see, like, is that working or not? And then other
Exactly.
times, sometimes I was like, well, I would like it and nobody likes it, but I still like it. So I'm still going to put it on the record.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
I just like it. I don't care.
Yes. Well, there's been just a couple of, I mean, like random things. Like I will hear a beat that some producer somewhere amazing will send me, and I'm like, oh, I've never heard anything like this before. And I'll just record like maybe 4 stems of a vocal on there, and it'll sound so pretty. And I'm like, can I just put this little part just like in the intro for no reason, just because I loved it so much and I love the sound so much. But usually things like that end up turning into a whole record if I give it time. It comes back around. So yeah, I get it though.
But your process, what do you are you the kind of person that, like, just to kind of understand? Some people walk around with like a notebook. Some people use their phone and do voice memos. Some people
Yeah.
sit down and say, I'm going to write a song, and they sit down every day and they put time in. Are you, or is it kind of like, is it kind of different thing? Different songs have different like birthing, and they come out of different places.
Yeah.
From you.
So if I'm at the piano, I'm writing pen and paper, no matter what. It's like if I'm sitting at the keyboard, it's pen and paper. If I'm in the studio, it's usually I'm writing it right there on the spot, or it's lyrics that I have put in my phone because the notes in my phone just go on for just days and days, just hundreds and hundreds of lyrics in there everywhere. So yeah, those, sometimes I'll hear a beat and I'll be like, yep, this is this one. And I'll search for my phone. Where is this? And I'll start singing it. And that's usually how a song can start in the studio, and then I end up just writing the rest on the spot.
Do you find like when you play piano, do you like to put the tape recorder on and just kind of do stream of consciousness and see if you actually just like what I find as a keyboardist? Sometimes I find, traditionally, sometimes I'll just write a piano part and then go back and do a vocal. But what I found sometimes, if I put my mic by my synth and I actually just start coming up with something and randomly do it, that sometimes that comes out better than anything I thought I was going to plan to do. That
Yeah.
kind of, just because, like, if you're sitting at your piano or your synth or even a guitar player, if they just sit in their hotel room and they put the tape recorder on and they just start making stuff up.
That's one of the most frustrating parts, actually, is because you'll just, catch a vibe right here, and then you try and recreate it, and it's not always the same. So, yeah.
That's why you run the tape and you find that these little snippets of things that you've done. That it's like a point in time thing, and then that becomes like the idea,
Yeah. Oh, well, for sure. There's definitely been times, plenty of times too, where I've actually gotten GarageBand out on my iPad and set it right there next to the piano and just done a bunch of things. And then I'll show my producers like this messy, like, garbage can of sounds. And I'm like, look, you guys, isn't it beautiful? And they're like, sure, we're going to do our best. But yeah, it's good though. Yeah. I'm grateful for the patience that I've been shown, for sure.
Well, yeah, it's a process, because sometimes, well, I've heard sometimes that people will do like an initial vocal, and maybe they had a voice memo or they didn't do it in a perfect environment. But
I call it a rough, and I'll like send them over, and I'll be like, sorry for this, you guys, but here it is.
But in some cases where sometimes that rough vocal ends up being on the final record just because it's so honest that when you try to do it for like the 100th time, it doesn't sound as good as the first or second time.
Yes. That's been a reality of mine as well. Yeah.
It's just a weird thing. It's like sometimes they're like these happy accidents or these things that happen because they're like, the idea in poetry is that there's like this muse, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of poets would say, like, I'm not going to overthink it. Like, it just let it come. And it really is because you've been writing so long. There are things in your head.
Right.
But it feels like it came from somewhere, right? But it's coming from you, and it's coming from somewhere else. And I think it's like what happens when you're a musician is like what you choose to let come in and actually retain. Is kind of like the kind of trick. And like one time I heard a story about Hendrix that I like to say. He was playing with like the Isley Brothers as a backup guy, right? He wasn't the lead. And in the middle of a recording session, he suddenly deviated and started putting all this stuff down. It didn't even match the song. And I
Yeah.
said, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "Well, the universe gave me this, and you were recording, and I just couldn't let it go, so I had to put it
Yeah.
down." And
Yeah.
that kind of shows you, like a guy like Hendrix is so famous for being so brilliant, but that's like he felt like I know this is another guy's recording session, but
Yeah.
I gotta put this down because this idea is so good. I can't I don't want to lose it.
I love it. So ballsy. I could never, but I think that that's amazing. I would have been like all awkward. I would have like left the room and like recorded it on my phone
Yeah,
or
but it's
something.
like
Just
I
like
guess
started here.
he didn't care. He just kind of would do stuff.
Of
But
course not. He's badass. He's Jimi Hendrix. Let's
yeah,
go.
but that's when he wasn't big. He was like, he was a
Oh, I
side.
love it. Well, then that's how he became Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, he
There
was
you
a
go.
side guy. He just didn't care.
Right? I love it. I know, right? No, there's something to be said for that, right? Nothing to lose. Just like, let's go.
Yeah, I think was this kind of like sometimes there's a fire in the belly. They say, for an
Mm-hmm.
artist, it's like, and you could burn your bridges or you could get in trouble. And Hendrix used to get fired all the time. But that's kind of like an innovator, right? Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to fit in. And when you were talking about
Right.
feeling like you're a little odd person out, or
Yeah.
I think sometimes there's a lot of energy comes from being not accepted, right?
Yeah.
You can actually take that drive and use it creatively. And
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, there's like so much power in feeling like you're not alone because there's always somebody that understands somewhere. So if that
yeah,
can be
I
me,
think
then that's a good thing.
well, I think your story when you said that you felt like a little out of place, you felt like because you're coming from, being an immigrant, coming from a different
Yeah.
culture, and
Mhm.
sometimes America can be unwelcoming to people who are different. And we kind of know that as African Americans,
Right.
we've dealt with it in certain ways, but
Know a thing or two about that. Yes, yes.
but I think what happens is like that sometimes gives you a lot of power creatively.
Yeah.
That you can actually use the pain or the being felt. I think like if you feel like you're like the other person that's not part of the in crowd, that
Yeah.
gives you the drive to be like an artist. There are a lot of
Yeah.
artists, whether you're a musician or an actor or a
Mhm.
painter, like a lot of the drive for the great artist is the fact that they weren't welcomed, right? That
Yeah.
they were thought of as being an oddball. That
Yeah.
kind of gave them their creative power.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm definitely doing the best that I can. And I'm really excited for this LP to drop, these 3 songs. I can't wait for you guys to hear.
Yeah, what we like to do is once you have your release and you start doing other work too, we love to have people come back and kind of present.
Yeah.
We've done like album release episodes where we've actually, on the eve of something coming out, we actually, help you push it and do an
Oh, very
episode
cool.
where we do that.
That's
So,
awesome.
that's something we're totally into. We've also had people come back with like their second project. So we've had multiple people on our show over the years do that. And we always invite people to do that. And we also end
That's
up doing
great.
online performances that we're starting to open up. We've got festivals that we have guests come on and do live kind of behind unplugged sessions or even fully plugged if they have the ability to do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we like to just to have that full picture of an artist and allow you to kind of show your talent to everybody. But one thing we like to ask people, like, you've got your new release coming and you've got videos you're going to work for it based on what is really hitting. What are your thoughts about the future of music going forward? I know we've been talking about kind of cross-cultural, cross-genre. Do you think that's, is there anything else you think in the future about music that you'd like to talk to?
I am so optimistic about the future of music. I think that the only reason why I'm sitting in front of you right now is because the future of music is so bright. I think that there is a large amount of people that are looking for something new and something different. And all of us want to feel, because we love music so much, to feel represented in the music that we listen to, which is why we choose the music that we listen to. So for me to be able to come forward in my way and, like I said, show all that passion from the Big East, it's a gift. And I am very optimistic for what the future holds with that, because there's just so much love around it. And so, yeah.
Well, I'm excited to always bring new perspectives, and I love talking to musicians that are like not just like one scene to the other. Because in America, you
Yeah.
can get stuck in the New York scene or the LA scene or
Right.
Nashville scene, and then you just don't think about like, well, what's going on in the Middle East or what's going on in
Yeah.
Central America. Or like, what
Right.
happens if you listen to a rock band in Argentina? And like
Right.
I actually talked to an Argentine musician, and I never really had listened to that type of vibe or a different approach to rock,
Yes.
coming from
Right.
a different perspective, because everybody hears rock, but then you listen to a band in Poland versus a band in Argentina or a band in Belgium
Right.
or a band in Berlin. They all come at it different ways. And
Yeah.
the language also is cool, because I like listening to bands actually in their native language.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because like if you listen to a band, if they try to do something in English, but maybe in French, it actually means something a little different. Or an Italian artist, if they
Yeah.
translate it, it doesn't come across the same way, because
Right.
there's things about language that are very important.
Yes, and that's why it's important to me to learn Arabic, and I'm slowly learning, and we have translators on the team right now that are helping me communicate with the fans. But I lost the language when I was younger, when I came to the States. So it's really important to me to learn it again. But Iraq, thank you for your patience with that one. So
Also, are you planning on actually doing versions of your songs so you could send them back to the Middle East?
in the future, yes, absolutely. As
Awesome.
I don't want to mess it up though. So I got to make sure that I
You
know
do
what
it
I'm
right. You
saying
can't do it
correctly. Yes, exactly. Let's do it one time and do it right. Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, I think that's awesome, because I really, like I said, I think it's fantastic to hear music. Like one time I lived in Japan, and I was listening to a lot of Japanese like heavy metal bands, and
Nice.
I actually didn't like to just see them doing Zeppelin. I like them doing their own song.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah.
I like to listen to how they approach in Japanese that type of vibe, and
Probably lit.
it
Yeah.
was really good. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I didn't understand Japanese. I was there for like 2 years. I
You're
started.
like, who cares? It's a
But
vibe.
with the
Yeah.
vibe of it was like, I like that song in the
Yes.
Japanese songs that they did better than when they were doing the American covers. And
Yeah.
I would show them, like, I think your song is better than that Zeppelin song you did,
You're
because
like, I want to download that one.
that's the one I want, because that's you guys are
That's
feeling.
authentically you.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's why I think it's awesome that you're gonna do that. That's really awesome. Like,
Oh,
when you
thank
have one of those
you.
songs, like, send them to me.
Yes, for sure. I will.
Yeah. So the other thing, before we go, we always ask, are you collaborating or working with other people or appearing on other artists, like in terms of features? Are you primarily focused on your own sound right now, or are you working on features at the same time with other artists?
Yeah. So I'm not allowed to say who, but I'm actually, yes, I'm very excited to be working on a few features. Yes.
Well, that's cool. I think as
Yes.
musicians, we have to find other ways to get things out, and collaborating with other
For
artists
sure.
is a
Yeah.
way of doing it, which is really cool.
Yes.
And then for the question about the whole COVID situation, I kind of doubled down on this podcast. Was my response was like, because I can't physically go to New York or Boston and play as the Ghost, my own band, I put more time into actually doing this.
Yeah.
And I think it's different people have done different approaches to what's happened during this time. One of the things I saw is a lot of bands in the last 2 years have been taking time that when they were on the road to actually, honing their craft as writers and spending a lot of time writing music. So I think we're actually in the cusp of an age where music writing is going to be very good, that we're going to get like a lot of interesting, very deep music, because
Yeah.
people were able to put the time into it that normally they don't get.
Well, that's refreshing to hear, because I mean, I know that there were a lot of artists that I know had a hard time being away from their fans and not being able to collaborate. So it was difficult for them to write. I myself have written alone most of my life. I'm just now starting to collaborate with other artists. And so for me, it was nothing new to just kind of be by myself and write everything out. So I know that certainly a lot of people had a harder time than me, but yes, a lot of music was written. Almost all my music was put out during the pandemic.
So you found gave you the time to actually hone your craft.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause I find that the problem I had, the problem I've talked to with other artists are ones that were in like traditional bands where they had like
Yeah.
drummers and bass players and
And
like
that would have been so rough. See, everybody, oh, yes. And
yeah,
I remember
that's,
hearing those stories from people that I knew, and it was a lot. It was tough. It was a
yeah,
tough time.
that's really tough. There are a lot of bands I know that because they kind of lived, the way they survived was touring. Because the way the industry is when we talk about streaming is great because I can reach people all over the world. But one of the
Yes.
other things about streaming is you don't really get paid like you do if you do a show, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of working musicians, they survive because they're in their Econoline van going from one town to the next,
Right.
playing all the clubs and getting on the scene and getting the vibe and getting fans following them and selling merch. Those bands had a real hard time.
Yeah.
If they weren't used to home recording and
Right.
going on a net, they didn't have their own studio and they kind of depended on, save enough money to go to the studio, and then they can't play in the studio and they're all separated. Yeah. I think that kind of structure has been very hard for bands in that kind of scenario. And I kind of,
For sure. Yeah, of course. Of course it would be. Yeah.
but yeah, I think the future is really good for artists now that we're on the cusp of getting back on the scene, and they could be doing more festivals this year.
Yeah.
And eventually, we're hoping to get back to New York and Boston and play in front of people. But,
yes, I hope that for you too. Definitely, that's amazing.
Yeah, when you're the type of musician that likes to play in front of people, it has been hard. But like we find other ways to do it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well,
So,
thank you so much for having me.
yeah. We're very excited that let your fans know that we are actually on Spotify video podcast, and so this has been live and on the YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. And all those channels will have permanent links for this podcast, and they'll be permanently on those channels, our channels. But
Perfect.
we also will be on Spotify as a video podcast within an hour. And we also convert to many different audio platforms, including Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Radio Public, Stitcher. We're on like 10 other platforms that are
That's
just
what's up.
they're going to cascade out there. So we will be pushing the ones that we just talked about, and we'll give you a Spotify link for your fans to check out. And
yes,
we're
thank
very happy
you.
that you came on the show, and we did hit almost an hour.
Awesome. That's amazing. I know my lashes are like coming off right now too. It's been so long since I put one on. Don't you feel special? I know, but thank you so much. It was great. It was really fun chatting.
Yeah, we just want to encourage everybody to go out to your Linktree, download, subscribe on the YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you download. Make sure you playlist. That's a very important. Make sure you like anywhere you see Shirena Parker. Download, like, subscribe,
yes.
forward, playlist.
You.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again.
Yes, take care.
Okay, bye.